The Threnody Combine Academy hung in the black between two dying suns, a wheel of alloy and light spinning slowly above the binary glare of HFY, and inside it, 700 of the galaxy's most promising young officers were being forged into weapons. Voskarn tacticians with chitin like polished obsidian, Ilvanari strategists whose minds ran calculations in colors most species couldn't see, Osgarath enforcers built like siege towers, bred for 300 years to never flinch, and one human. Cadet Ren Sable was 19 years old, 5'6", and she smiled at everything, which was, as far as most of her cohort was concerned, the single strangest thing about her. Not her size, not her species, though humanity was still new enough to combine space that most cadets had never met one before her. It was the smiling. Voskarn tacticians did not smile during tactical briefings. Ren did. "She's not serious," War Master Tull had said, 3 weeks into the term, watching Ren fumble a formation drill so badly that 2 Osgarath cadets had to physically redirect her out of a collision path. Tull stood 2.5 meters tall, built from gray-plated muscle, and had spent 40 years deciding which recruits would live to become officers and which would wash out. She giggled. During live-fire simulation, she giggled. But the instructors kept her anyway, because Ren Sable had a habit of noticing things. She noticed which Ilvanari cadet was secretly failing calculus, and quietly helped her before anyone found out. She noticed the maintenance drone with a hairline crack in its coolant line 3 days before it would have failed. She noticed, on the feral training moon of Drath Sur, during a routine squad navigation exercise, a sound underneath the wind that nobody else's ears were tuned to catch. She wandered off from her squad to find it. It took 6 hours. Her sergeant filed a missing cadet report. Search drones were launched. She walked back into camp at dusk, covered in mud, humming a tune nobody recognized, with 2 Kestar cubs trotting at her heels like she'd raised them from birth. The camp went dead silent. If you don't know what a Kestar is, count yourself lucky, because most sentient species in Combine space know exactly what it is and what it did. Apex predators, native to the shattered moons beyond the Veldras expanse, 6-limbed, armor-hided, faster than anything that size had any right to be, with a bite force that could shear through Duracrete. 50 years ago, a single breeding pair had wiped out an entire Combine listening post in one night. 11 soldiers, gone before dawn. The species had been hunted to the edge of extinction in response. Kestar were not livestock. They were not pets. They were not even wildlife anymore. Not really. The Combine classification was blunt and final. Unsalvageable. Kill on sight. And Ren Sable had 2 juveniles following her around camp like ducklings, nuzzling into her hands for scraps of her ration bar. Cadet Sable. War Master Tull's voice when he arrived could have stripped paint. "Explain. They're orphans," Ren said. Like this was obvious. Like this settled everything. "I found their den. Something hit it, demolition residue. Looked like one of our practice charges went wide. The rest of the litter didn't make it. These 2 were starving. They wouldn't leave me alone once I fed them. They are not pets. I know. I didn't ask them to be. They just..." She scratched behind the smaller one's jaw ridge, and it made a sound like a rusted hinge that might, generously, have been described as a purr. "They chose the Academy Charter, drafted 200 years earlier by a coalition of species who agreed on very little, except the danger of untrained fauna aboard a facility built to train soldiers, was explicit on the matter of pets. There were none. No unauthorized organisms, no exceptions. Tull gave her 48 hours to surrender the animals to xenobiology containment. Everyone on that moon, human or otherwise, knew what happened to unsalvageable fauna in containment. It wasn't called euthanasia in the official reports. It was called humane disposition, which was a phrase that made Ren's jaw tighten in a way that surprised the cadets standing near her. Because up until that moment, none of them had seen her jaw do anything but smile. She named them anyway. Bram, the larger male, all restless energy and sharp curiosity. Sable, the female, quieter, watchful, the one who slept pressed against Ren's side in the maintenance bay where she'd smuggled them, feeding them by hand while 3 other cadets filmed the whole thing on their optic implants in open disbelief. "You understand this ends with you expelled," said Ren Tavik, an Ilvanari cadet with pale violet skin and the kind of clinical calm that made her excellent at strategy and exhausting at parties. She was, in the specific and complicated way of the Academy, Ren's closest friend. Or dead. Kestar imprint young are still Kestar Ren. In 8 months, those cubs will weigh 400 kilos each. I know. You know, and you're still... Ren Tavik gestured at the scene. Ren, cross-legged on the floor, Sable's massive head heavy in her lap, Bram gnawing contentedly on what appeared to be an old boot. This. They didn't choose to be unsalvageable, Ren said. Somebody decided that about them before they were even born. I just don't think I agree. 1. It was around then that a Combine inspector arrived from the capital. A Voskarn official named Director Ashkel Voro, silver-chiddened and soft-spoken, in a way that immediately put Ren on edge, because soft-spoken predators are the ones you have to watch. He toured the academy with the appearance of routine oversight. He asked, with great interest, to see the cubs. You should know the history, he told Ren, not unkindly, standing at a careful distance from the enclosure. 50 years ago, Outpost Varen. 11 dead in one night. The Combine spent a decade hunting the species to the edge of oblivion because of what one breeding pair did. You are looking at the reason your charter says what it says. I read the report, Ren said. The outpost was built over a den site. Nobody surveyed the ground first. The Kestar didn't attack an outpost. They defended a nursery. Director Voro's mandibles clicked. Once, a gesture Ren hadn't yet learned to read. That is one interpretation. It's the interpretation in the report, Director. I read the whole thing. Most people just read the casualty count. He left without answering, and something about the stillness in his posture as he walked away sat wrong in Ren's stomach for the rest of the day, though she couldn't have said why. She should have trusted that feeling. Because 2 nights later, at 0300 station time, the perimeter alarms on Draith Sur tore through the dark like the moon itself was screaming. Ren was awake before the second klaxon cycle, Bram and Sable already on their feet in the maintenance bay, hackles raised, both cubs snarling toward the north wall in perfect, terrified unison. On the tactical display in the command tent, a single contact was lighting up red and climbing in size, with every second, something enormous, moving at a dead sprint through the tree line, already through the outer sensor net, already through the second perimeter, moving fast, moving with purpose, moving toward the one scent on this entire moon that mattered more to it than its own survival. An adult Kestar, feral, unbonded, grieving, and coming straight for its stolen young. The wall came apart like it was made of paper. 600 kilos of armored muscle hit the Academy's outer barricade at a dead run, and the barricade simply ceased to be an obstacle, alloy plating peeling back like foil, and then it was inside the perimeter, and every alarm on Draith Sur was screaming at once. War Master Tull's response was immediate and, by every metric the Combine had ever trained into him, correct, overwhelming force. Osgoroth enforcers deployed in a firing arc, energy weapons cycling to full output, because that was the only lesson 50 years of history had taught anyone about Kestar. You did not negotiate with an apex predator. You neutralized the threat before it neutralized you. It didn't work. The creature took hits that would have dropped an Osgoroth soldier and kept coming, because it wasn't thinking about the soldiers at all. 2 of Tull's people went down, thrown clear, alive but broken, and the beast tore through the camp's center, with a sound like the moon itself was tearing. And every rational tactical model the Combine had ever built said the only outcome left was more death. Ren saw it differently. She saw a mother. She saw the way its head swept low and constant, tracking scent, not threat. She saw it ignore an open lane past 2 Osgoroth riflemen, a clean kill, easy, and it didn't take it, because killing wasn't what it came here for. She saw, underneath 600 kilos of claws and armor plate, and 50 years of a species being called unsalvageable, something that every human mother for 10,000 years would have recognized on sight, a parent who believed her children were dead, tearing the world apart to find out for certain. Stand down, Ren said, and nobody heard her over the weapons fire, so she said it louder, running toward the command line instead of away from it, which was, Ren Tavik would say later, the single most Ren Sable thing she had ever done. Stand down. She's not hunting. She's searching. Cadet, get back, Tull's voice, a roar over the chaos, but Ren was already past the firing line, already out into the open ground between the Academy and the beast, and Bram and Sable were beside her, matching her stride, unafraid, because they had never once in their short lives had a reason to be afraid of her. For one frozen second, every gun on the field had a clean shot at Ren Sable's back, and not one of them fired. Because even War Master Tull, 40 years of never flinching, found that his hand had stopped, watching a 19-year-old girl walk unarmed toward a creature that had just torn a barricade apart with its bare claws. The adult Kestar's head snapped toward her. Ren did not run. Everything in her training, every instinct evolution had ever handed down to a small, soft mammal standing in front of an apex predator, screamed at her to run, and she stood still instead, hands open, and let the cubs go. Bram and Sable crossed the last 20 meters at a dead sprint, calling out in high, cracked voices, and the mother's answering sound was not a roar. It was something else entirely, something raw and broken and enormous, a sound with no translation and no need of one, and she went down onto her forelimbs in the dirt as her children reached her, and for a long, suspended moment, the only thing moving on that entire battlefield was one Kestar mother pulling her cubs in against her armored flanks, like she could fold the whole galaxy out of reach of them. Nobody fired, nobody spoke. War Master Tull, 4 decades of certainty standing in the dust, watched a 19-year-old human do with empty hands what his entire arsenal could not, and said nothing at all, because there was nothing adequate to say. It should have ended there. It didn't. Hold your fire, came a new voice over the comm. Smooth, satisfied, and wrong. Director Voro, watching the feed from a secure channel, and something in his tone made the hair on Ren's arm stand up even before he finished speaking. This footage is excellent. Confirmed Kestar hostility, breach of Academy perimeter, casualties among combined personnel, more than sufficient grounds. Strike team, converge and eliminate all 3 specimens. I want this resolved before the footage requires a second ending. Ren's blood went cold. He hadn't wanted the mother stopped. He'd wanted her dead on camera proof, permanent and irrefutable, to justify wiping out whatever remained of an already shattered species, and a career built on being the officer who finally solved the Kestar problem for good. The strike team was already moving. A dozen armored figures converging on the hangar approach with weapons that made Tull's earlier volley look like a warning shot. War Master. Ren turned, and for the first time in 8 weeks, she wasn't smiling. That family did not attack anyone who didn't attack them first. If your director kills them now, in front of everyone on this field, he's not enforcing the charter. He's murdering a mother in front of her children to make a point. Tull looked at her for a long moment. Then at the 3 Kestar, curled together in the dirt, utterly unthreatening now, utterly exposed. Then at the strike team closing in. 40 years, Tull said quietly. I trained soldiers to believe strength was the only language that mattered on a battlefield. He unslung his weapon, checked it, turned to face the incoming strike team instead of the family behind him. You didn't win that field with strength, cadet. Whatever you did, I don't have a word for it. But I know a lie when I hear one, and the director just told one. He looked back at her. Something that might, on an Osgaroth, have been the ghost of respect. Get them to the hangar. I'll hold the line. What followed was fast and loud, and later got condensed into 90 seconds of footage that would be played across half of Combine space. Ren sprinting the family toward the hangar bay under covering fire from Tull and the 2 wounded Osgaroth soldiers who dragged themselves back into the fight rather than let a 19-year-old cadet die alone. Ren Tavik, appearing out of nowhere with a maintenance loader rigged into an improvised barricade, screaming Ilvanari tactical calculations that turned out to also work as cover fire coordinates. Bram, half-grown and furious, putting himself bodily between Ren and a strike team rifle barrel and taking a stun round meant for her shoulder, and the mother wounded, exhausted, still standing turning at the hangar door to face down the last 2 attackers herself, because if there was one lesson 50 years of Combine cruelty hadn't managed to teach the Kestar, it was how to stop protecting what she loved. It ended with Director Voro's own strike team commander refusing the final order, refusing to fire into a hangar bay where an Academy War Master, 3 cadets, and 2 wounded soldiers had formed a human and alien wall around a family that, by any honest account, had never once struck first. The footage that reached the Combine Council wasn't the one-sided massacre Voro had engineered. It was the whole story, every second of it. And it turned out that even the Council, accustomed to reports full of casualty counts and threat assessments, knew the difference between a monster and a mother when they finally saw it laid out in full. Director Voro was recalled to the capital under a cloud that would follow him for the rest of his career. The Academy Charter was amended within the month not to abolish the no pets rule, but to carve out, for the first time in 200 years, a category the founding species had never thought to write: bonded fauna, creatures that chose their handlers as surely as any handler chose them. Bram and Sable stayed. So did their mother, who Ren eventually named Halcyon, for reasons she never fully explained to anyone, though Ren Tavik suspected it had something to do with the particular quality of quiet that settled over the training moon once the fighting stopped. War Master Tull kept a framed still from the footage in his office, for the rest of his career, the moment the mother went down onto her forelimbs in the dirt and told every incoming class of cadets, human and otherwise, that the deadliest weapon he'd ever seen deployed on a battlefield hadn't been armor, or firepower, or a species built by 3 centuries of engineering to never flinch. It had been a girl who refused to be afraid of something everyone else had already decided to hate. 3 months later, Combine sensor stations along the Veldras expanse logged something nobody had ever recorded before: scattered, feral populations of species long classified unsalvageable creatures every world in Combine space had learned only to fear quietly, deliberately, shifting their migration patterns toward human worlds. Nobody in the Combine had an explanation for it in the official reports. Ren Sable, when asked, just smiled.